Well, good afternoon, and welcome to this edition of our afternoon coffee and conversation. I think I'm getting some of the electronic bugs worked out of this finally, but we'll see as we go along. We are continuing our National Adoption Month features today with part two of my interview that I did with Cathy Carroll last week. We did it in one sitting, and it went a little longer than what I was wanting to, so that's why I broke it into two sections. Anyway, if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe bar and then the notification bell if you're on YouTube. And then be sure and give these videos a thumbs up. Helps the algorithm somehow. I don't understand how all that works. And check out my Patreon page if you'd like to help with the work of this channel. Check out the articles I do on Substack. I just published one there last night. And as I said, don't forget to give these videos a thumbs up. That somehow helps all the algorithms. I don't claim to understand all that technical stuff. And I need to take a minute here and tell you a little bit about 7 Weeks Coffee. 7 Weeks Coffee has given over $1 million to pro-life causes. And you can help out by going and checking out their website. They have got some holiday blends that are coming out. They have helped about 1,000 pro-life organizations with about $1 million. And if you will enter Cordal 2013 at checkout, you'll get 10% off your first order. Drink coffee, save a life. Check out 7 Weeks Coffee. Gets its name from the fact that at 7 weeks, a human embryo is about the size of a coffee bean. So if you enjoy your coffee, check them out. And so, as I said, we are going to be airing part two of this interview I did with Cathy Carroll. In case you missed the first part, this one's a little bit special because we are cousins, and it's been a blessing having her in the family. And I'm going to play the rest of this interview that we did, and then I'll be back with a few follow-up comments. So without further ado, let's roll the tape.
Now, the first time that we did delve into the ancestry business was the year before Peggy passed away, or maybe a couple of years. She was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at age 49, and she wanted to know some medical history of our blood relatives, to see if she could see where that had come from, to see if she had, gotten that genetically, and if it would be a problem with her children, whatever. So she did delve into that, and she found that I had one living sibling, one living sister in Fort Worth, Texas. And so she started the process. Before that, Steve, I'll say this, that we were told that we could not arrange a meeting of any of our siblings or parents, which we had done that, not prior to this time, but we thought, well, maybe if we meet with some of our siblings, and see what type of lives they have had, what type of lives they've, if they've accomplished things in their life. Well, anyway, we didn't, we were told that we could not arrange meetings just from our desires to meet with them, that it had to be a mutual.
Now who told you that?
Now, this is where Peggy found that out from the State Department. As far as I can understand, she called them, or she found out that.
So that was the state of Alabama that told her you can't contact them unless it's mutual?
Yeah, unless it was mutual. We could not meet with them and have a meeting unless they wanted to meet with us. And so we couldn't find anybody. We couldn't find any living relatives, and they were all gone except this one sister in Texas. And so I uh, I called her and I said, "This is your blood's sister, Cathy, that was taken from the home when I was a little girl." And she said, and she called me back. Steve, I left a message that day, and I said, "If you're interested in talking to me, I would love to talk to you." And so she did call me back. We communicated by phone a few times, and she had two sons. I had two nephews. She in fact, her son drove her to meet me. Drove to Alabama from Texas in 2014, and but when I first started communicating with her, she seemed well. But between the time I first started talking with her on the phone, she had some health issues come up, and her son took her to the doctor. Well, by the time he drove her here, she had been diagnosed with liver, lung, and kidney cancer.
Oh.
So he drove her here with her lying down in the back seat to meet me. They came here to my home, and I met her, and they stayed. They had gotten reservations in a local hotel, and but they had a meal with us, and we talked, and but she went. That was the weekend of July the 4th, 2014, and they went home, and she passed away August the 6th.
Oh, so that was at the end.
Yes, that was at the end of her life, and that was my only blood cis relative. And then I have met the brother that I mentioned earlier that sought to find me and never did. He had also passed away with a heart attack. Well, he and his wife had one daughter who is my blood niece, and I have met them. I've met my brother's wife, who has remarried since that time, and I've met my blood niece. We called and met in a place in North Alabama close to where we were born. But I have met them and talked to them, and we have covered some topics of my parents, and because they were there, they knew him. She knew him through my brother. Okay. And they filled us in a lot on their lives.
Now, one of the things that comes up a lot with adoptees, and you kind of touched on this when you mentioned Peggy's and Parkinson's, is the idea of having your own children because you're flying blind essentially as far as your heredity goes, which is something that entered into our decision to adopt too. My wife went back to her agency to try and see if she could find anything, and what little information was in the file was useless.
Yeah.
And I know some people adoptees who decided to adopt because there were some things, in one case, Huntington's disease ran in the family. It's neurological, I think. But did you and Peggy ever consider things like that as possible reasons to adopt yourself or to not have? Because you're flying blind. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know in my blood relatives, we know bad hearts, which proves we do have a heart, by the way. But we've got heart issues and things like that I've got to start at my age looking out for. But how did you deal with that, or did you just decide to kind of step out on faith and just to have your own biological children?
Yes, that's what we did, Steve. We both. Like I said, we were both, and I know things like that can become overwhelming, if you allow it to. But that's where, as a Christian, I had to come to the place where I just took God at His word, and where He says, that He knew us in our mother's womb, and that He has You know, he has plans for us. He created us to love him and to be live for him. That's why he created us. Many people don't choose that route, but in saying all of that, Peggy and I, we just chose to step out on faith and say, Lord, these are your children. And that's what when I pray, before we had our first child, my husband and I we prayed and said, Lord, we're ready to start a family if that's your plan for our lives. And that's when we started, that's when he gave us with our children, 1, 2, and 3. And what a blessing, they have been. But we have to say to ourselves, Lord, they're really yours, and we all, death is part of life, and disease and is part of life. It's the sinful world we came into. God doesn't put those things on us. We come into a sinful world that because of sin, we have to go through disease and death and sickness and things. So we have to just know and realize that whatever we go through, that He will be there. He will help us through it. It may be really tough, and we'll look back and say, how did I do that? Well, it was because He was carrying us. So we've gone through that in a quick little miracle, if I may. When we had our second child, my little boy, he was like 3 years old. Prior to that, maybe 2 to 3, he had many ethnic episodes, which he would stop breathing. He would have trouble breathing, and his tonsils would close up. He had tonsillitis, maybe at least once a month. So I took him, I prayed. I said, Lord, show me who to take him to. What doctor do I need to take him to have it see? And this is how intimate God, how well He knows us. I know, as He led me to an ENT in Birmingham. Well, I took my son Chad. He scheduled him for surgery. He said his tonsils had to be taken out, his adenoids. At that time, they were still using the cutting method, the scissor method, most doctors. But this doctor, whom I prayed and God led me to him, he was using the newer cauterizing method. He would cauterize the tonsil, and as he cauterized it, it would seal, and the blood loss was very minimal. And so we went to the hospital, and even our pastor of our church, the next day, he said, I'll tell you what he said in just a minute, but all right, we went to the hospital. They did the surgery. The surgeon came out. The ENT came out, and he said, I have just experienced something that I have only seen one time in my 15 years of being an ENT surgeon. And of course, we were all ears on what could it have been. Well, he said, your little boy, when I peeled back the tonsil with the laser, it was a laser method, not the full laser, but he said, when I peeled back the tonsil, he said, there was something pumping in his throat. And he said, it was the carotid artery from his heart to his brain. And he said, if I had used scissors, he would have bled out in 2 minutes.
It was that close?
It was that close. It was there behind the tonsil. And I fell on the bed, and I said, thank you, God, because I had prayed and prayed. I didn't know what I was praying for. God knew. God knows the route of every vessel, every vein. He knows. And He took care of my baby. when I didn't know what I was asking him to do. And so the doctor, he did, my son was able to live, and he's still living. And but I was led. That became a testimony for me, and knowing that God knows when we don't know, and that could have been a hereditary thing there, but anyway, He preserved the life of my son, and that was a miracle. That although I didn't know what I was praying for, God did. So.
Yeah, that would be there to stop that short of the carotid artery, because that could be now one of the things. Now, Debbie and my wife and I have been in a couple of group homes, and there were three. Let's see, one, two, three. What we would consider what they classified as failed adoptions.
Mm-hmm.
Two of them had, and I was very familiar with two of the cases. Were you ever concerned that this adoption might not work out? That because you've already got rejection issues from your birth family, was that ever a concern? Because I have found that in the obviously marrying an adoptee and having an adopted child, I've met a lot more adoptees than I ever knew before, and that seems to surface quite a lot. That for whatever reason, the birth family gave them up, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. And now this other family's taken me in, and what if they don't want me? That sort of thing comes up. Was that ever anything that you and or Peggy had to contend with?
I don't remember Peggy ever verbalizing any that concern to me. But I believe in the back of my mind, it probably was, because rejection has always been a dominant fear, I guess, in my mind. And Steve, I could talk all day, and you may just need to cut me off, but my life, but a lot about it. You may have learned just something today that you didn't know, but to tell the listeners today, after we were adopted, I was adopted in March of 1959, and I was 4. But my birthday is in June, and I turned 5 in June. That was in 59.
Mm-hmm.
In 1962, my adopted adopted dad was killed tragically in a train and truck. His truck hit a train, or the train hit his truck. He was killed in November of 1962. His dad was killed the day before. My paternal grandfather was killed the day before in a truck accident in Mississippi. We were in North Carolina at the time. We were trying to find my dad to tell him that his daddy had been killed. And of course, we didn't have cell phones back then. So he was killed without knowing his dad was killed the day before. So therefore we had a double funeral for my grandfather and my daddy on Friday after they were killed on Monday and Tuesday. Well, to answer your question, after that point, many people approached my mother and said, you should give these girls back to the state, because how can you manage 2 adopted girls at this? I was only 8 years old.
Yeah,
I had only lived with my adopted father 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years and change.
After,
Yeah.
and I'd grown to love him so. It was so, that was so traumatic to lose him, to lose my granddad, only 3 years after being adopted. And then my mom said, "How can you say that?" And she told us later. She said, "You girls were the only reason I had to live."
Now, were they saying that in front of you and Peggy? Were they saying?
No, I didn't hear
or did they
anyone.
have sense enough to at least go in the other room where you couldn't hear it?
My adopted mother, told us about it years later. When we were old enough to, she told us that she was approached, and I said, "Why didn't she just give us back?" Well, they didn't speak that in front of us, but in the depths of my heart, I was afraid. My adopted mother, only had a 9th grade education. She quit school to take care of her 11 siblings and the babies that were born after she was grown. And she had to cook food and milk the cows and cook 100 biscuits before she walked to school in the mornings. And therefore, she had a hard life, but she had no education. And then she was left with us. But she was so determined. My mother was a strong person, and
I was thinking stubborn, but strongly.
She was very stubborn. She was very, I'll go on with another S word, strong, stubborn, strict. She was very strict. We were, oh my goodness, she kept us under a tight thumb. I mean, she kept a watch on us, and so many, even
Well, my dad said that I think the expression he used was, "You were kept on a pretty short leash."
Yeah. But after all is said and done, I thank God for her. I still feel like that when my adopted daddy was killed, it was such a burden was put on her that she was the sole keeper, the sole provider, the sole everything, and it was left up to her. And people were, she didn't want to fail us, and she didn't want to. That's why she worked so hard. She had to work at little menial jobs, like being a cook in the 5 and 10 cent store at the snack bar.
I remember that.
She could make a dilly of a patty melt. Everybody came there to get those patty melts. She did the best she could with what she had to do with. And when it came college time, Peggy and I were going to college. She sent us to college. She bought us one old Bel Air Chevrolet car.
Yeah.
All forest green.
Yeah.
And we had to both go to college, schedule our classes as close as we could. And when we couldn't, we'd sit in the car and study, or study in the library till the other one got through. And we made it. We made it. We both graduated from University of Montevallo.
And I would say that is also another difference between that time and today, is that there was a lot of grit and determination. There were 12, just to put a little more context into this, there were 12 kids in that family.
Yes.
10 of them lived to adulthood, 2 finished high school, and 9th grade, I think, is about as far as the rest of them got. Well, we have one aunt that I think lacked a half a credit of PE or something, and that was as close as she got to graduation. But the rest of them did quite well. I mean, for not finishing high school, not going to college, they all did very well for themselves. And I think that has a lot to do with the sheer grit that you grew up with in those days. You didn't have, this whole EBT, SNAP benefit. You didn't have any of that.
No.
So you had to push ahead and do whatever job you got to pay the rent and put food on the table. And I just remember that the house you grew up in, and Aunt Uner, how she took very good care of that house and made sure that you and your sister were taken care of. And that is something I've always admired about our aunts and uncles is how they made sure their kids were taken care of. They may not have had the biggest, best house, but they had a house that was structurally sound. They had a car, the kids had clothes, they had food. And I think that has a lot to do with just the way they grew up. That was pretty typical in the South. I think between the Civil War and about 1975 or 80, there wasn't a lot of money down there. And that was just, they did whatever it took to get by. And to take care of business. And I really appreciate that about our family is how they did that and why. I mean, my dad, I don't know if he finished the 9th grade, but 9th grade came up in the conversations. Whether he finished it or not, I've never been clear on that. But here again, he did real well. Your mom did. They all did real well for themselves. And I think that is just proof that when your back's to the wall, you'll do what it takes for your family. And that's the other thing is I think they weren't as selfish as a lot of parents are today. I have run into that quite a lot with other parents. But my daughter, when she came along, this is it. This is the center of what we deal with. So it looks like even though Uncle Troy wasn't in the picture for very long, you had a pretty good example about the proper way to raise children, especially since you had a single mother all those years. I said all that to say this, basically, that you had a really good example. Plus, you were in church from day one when they brought you home, which I think has a lot to do with the spiritual aspect of it.
It does.
That you knew that. So, as far as the example goes, were there other adults that came in and helped out at all once your dad was gone? Of course, she had, like aunts, uncles, or neighbors that came in to lend a hand and try to make this work, or was she just pretty much doing it on her own?
She did it pretty much on her own, Steve. She was very independent. And she grew up independent, having to be in charge of, so much in her own home as a child and as growing up. She was very, very independent, and other than, just her dependence, I believe that she depended on the Lord. Mother prayed, she prayed, and she trusted Him for provision. And she trusted Him for strength to do what she did for us. And even though I feel like sometimes I suffered socially because she didn't let us go here or there, and we always had to know when and who we were going with, how long ago, and be there and whatever. Kids don't have those restrictions these days.
No, they don't.
But I pray my grandchildren do, because I see from having lived it in this day and time, there's so many more dangers and things for them to accidentally even fall into, and I just, I pray for them already, but I thank God for this is I can say this as a cap to my whole interview today, that God saw my need. He knew my need before I didn't know. He took me out of that circumstance, out of that lifestyle, which if I had stayed in, there's no, I would probably already be dead.
What happened.
That's right. And because He had His hand on my life from the get-go, He preserved me from the dangers and the destruction that lifestyle led to for all my siblings. I believe that's why I'm still here, and He's given me the privilege of working with children in our church, and I work with the children's choir and the children's church at Liberty Hill, where I was brought to at age 4. I've worked with the children's ministry for 40 years now, and I thank God for that.
That's a long time now. And you also worked in the public schools for a while as a paraprofessional, I think, or
I did. I worked with special needs children for 19 years in the school system. I got my degree in social work at the University of Montevallo, but after just a minimal 2 or 3 years, I felt like that being adopted, I could handle working with children who were abused and neglected, but I was put into the position of a family and children's service worker, and I was having to take children from their parents and put them into foster homes, and then I would get calls. I would have to be on call for 7 days of the month, and during that time I would get cursed and all kinds of things from the parents that I had to take their children from their home, and I thought that I was dealing with it, and outwardly I was, but inwardly I was in knots, and so I started having physical repercussions because of that, and so therefore I my doctor advised me to come out of that field for a while, and I did, and I gradually got better, and then I interviewed for the paraprofessional job, and I worked 19 years in the school system with special needs children, and what a blessing that was. I believe God used me in that area to love and care for those precious children, and then when I retired from that, right at 20 years of that, my first little grandson was born, and so I've been caring for them since that time. So yes, God has blessed me all along the way, and kept me, and I've always had a heart for children, and I'm a child at heart.
Yeah, I think we're all a little bit of a kid at heart. Now, I might have to break this into two parts when I post it. But one more thing I wanted to get at was, what would you say to parents who have adopted and they're having a hard time with it? Like I said, the failed adoptions we dealt with where kids were brought to a children's home, and in one case, the adopted family basically walked away. Long story made short. What would you say to the parents in that case that just think that this isn't working out? What?
Seeing firsthand that very same scenario in our church, our pastor's son and his wife were not able to have their own biological children, so they became foster parents, and they had two little boys, twins, and they there were triplets, and the little girl was taken to another home, and the little boys were kept together with them, and they eventually, after fostering them for a while, they were able to adopt them. It was a big, long process.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't been easy. I've watched it firsthand, although I've been through it. Having two at one time and the same age, and one is totally different than the other. It's not easy, but again, people that are hearing me, if you don't know Christ, if you have not come to the place of repentance and belief and realize that you need a Savior, I plead with you to come to that place and see that without Him, it's hard in this life. It's so very hard. Life is hard any way you look at it. But when we have Jesus to call upon and to help us, well, our youth director, the pastor's son, they are wonderful. They're patient with these boys. They have discipline problems. They have behavior problems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and they did have the opportunity to adopt a teenager. I mean, to foster a teenager. And they had her, and she came to church, and she came with them, and we all loved her. But in the background, she was giving them fits at home with behaviors that had already been ingrained into her. That's why, as 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 we live and as we're adopted at different ages, it's going to present different stages of difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
The more that you have seen and heard and have been has been instilled within your spirit, it's going to be hard to but listen, my favorite is, listen to this, Jeremiah 32:17 says, "Ah, Lord God, you have created the heavens and the earth with your mighty power and your outstretched arm. Nothing is too hard for you." That's my favorite scripture. And in saying that, there's nothing that he cannot help you with in life. But there are situations, just like this teenager that they fostered, she had to go back because she was doing things that even the system knew that couldn't be dealt with in the within that family. The two siblings that were younger, they did not need to be exposed
Right,
to what
right.
he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it can, Steve, it can. I mean, I say it happens, and there's some situations that it's going to be inevitable where that child is just. But pray for that child. Pray for that child, and pray for yourselves before you throw up your hands and quit. Ask Jesus. Just say, "Is this your will for my life to adopt this child? If it is, Lord, make a way," and He will. He will make your path plain. He will show you what to do. I believe that with all my heart.
And that's kind of how it worked out with us. Once we brought our daughter home, everyone saw that even though she's black, that she belongs with us because she acts just like us. She's got the same sense of humor, the same sarcasm, and so it's like, she was custom made for us. And I'm going to be speaking of that, but I'll get to that in a minute. But as we bring this to a close today, I appreciate you being here and sharing your story, and I hope that it will help anyone watching who might be wanting to adopt older children. There are a lot of older children in the foster care system that are needing homes, and if you can find it, to look into that if you're considering adoption. I would encourage that. But let's wrap this up. On the next episode, let's see, today is Monday as we're taping this, and we'll put it out on Friday the 21st. Tomorrow, Eric Floyd's going to be joining me in a pre-recorded interview, and we're going to be talking about transracial adoption. He's adopted sibling group of three boys, and I've got a black adopted daughter, and we're going to be talking about that and some of the challenges that we have faced. But I thank you for being here, Cathy, and sharing your story with the audience for National Adoption Month. And we really want to encourage people to look into adoption. It is a choice. When you find yourself with an unplanned pregnancy, and there are agencies in your area that can help you out. But thanks for being here, and have a great Monday, a great week, everybody, and be good to yourself. And if it's at all possible, be good to somebody else. And thanks for watching. We will see you all in the next video.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. And that is my interview with Cathy Carroll. Parts 1 and 2 are both posted on my Facebook and on my YouTube channel. You can check them both out there. And then coming attractions, by way of coming attractions tomorrow. This is going to be an interesting one. This is going to be a live interview that I'm doing with Blair Brewer. Hang on, let me take that back. And if you know anything about me, you know me and electronics typically don't play nice together. Anyway, as I was trying to say, tomorrow will be my interview with Blair Brewer, as she had an abortion and then has come to regret it. And we're going to be talking to her tomorrow about that and about what all she went through. This is an article here that she wrote for Live Action that you see on screen right, that you can go and look up and read. And we'll have a chat box if you'd like to ask questions for that tomorrow at 2 o'clock Central Time, 3 o'clock Eastern Time. And then on Wednesday, we'll wrap up National Adoption Month with my conversation with Robin Burrows of A Home for Jolie, which helps with the financing of adoption. They award grants to people in certain circumstances for help with financing their adoptions. So that will wrap it up for today. We thank you for being here. Be sure and share these videos and to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're on YouTube. If you're not, hop on over there and subscribe to it. Thanks for watching. That's going to wrap it up for today. Have a great Monday, as good a Monday can be. Be good to yourself, and if you possibly can, be good to somebody else. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.